once again slaying or having this wrath displayed. To show you how this bloodline trickles on in Numbers 25. We see another Levite executing the righteous indignation of God. In verse number 4 of Numbers 25, it says this, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Take all the heads of the people, and hang them up before the Lord against the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. And Moses said unto the judges of Israel, Slay ye every one his men that were joined unto Baal Peor. And behold, one of the children of Israel came and brought unto his brethren a Midianitish woman in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel, who were weeping before the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose up from among the congregation and took a javelin in his hand." Upon seeing this indignation, when the people were in a state of striving to get it right with God, when he saw this Midianitish woman and what his brethren were doing with sleeping with her at this moment, and not just at this moment, but period. Look what he did with the javelin in verse 8, this Levite. "And he went after the man of Israel into the tent, and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly. So the plague was stayed from the children of Israel, and those that died in the plague were 24,000. It was a Levite that stopped the plague by displaying its righteous indignation. We're heading somewhere. So now seeing the history of the bloodline of Levi. Levi being, as Jacob said, an instrument of cruelty and self-will and being angered easily. And displaying his anger on those that were unrighteous in many terms in his eyes. We see the same action throughout all the Levites in the Bible up to that time. So now, when they come out of Egypt, when God begins to set up the organization of the children of Israel that they may worship, serve, and present to him, he needs or requires to have a group that's set apart just for himself. Ones that would do what's required, ones that have no issue shedding blood, meaning the blood of animals, bulls and goats, and one that has a righteous indignation in their heart. So we see in Numbers chapter 3 that it could be because of the things that were mentioned throughout the scripture, but who knows? But the Lord knows. But all we know is that the Levites were chosen. So in Numbers chapter 3, it says that, "And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Bring the tribe of Levi near, and present them before Aaron the priest, that they may minister unto him. And they shall keep his charge and the charge of the whole congregation before the tabernacle of the congregation to do the service of the tabernacle. And they shall keep all the instruments of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the charge of the children of Israel to do the service of the tabernacle. And you shall give the Levites unto Aaron to his sons. They are wholly given unto him out of the children of Israel. And you shall appoint Aaron and his sons, and they shall wait on their priest's office. And the stranger that cometh nigh shall be put to death. The stranger meaning the Gentile that dwelt among them, if there be any, or any that's not like them. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, And I, behold, I have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel, and instead of all the firstborn that opened up the matrix among the children of Israel, therefore the Levite shall be mine inheritance." Now after this, notice how he said instead of the firstborn. Like when it related to Isaac, he was the firstborn from Sarah. And as time went on, the firstborn received the blessing or the inheritance of the father, the birthright. But God now is saying, now that he's building this structure, this organization, this body, that he shall alter the world with and through, he says, no longer I will not take the firstborn. Instead of taking the firstborn of all that open up the matrix, he says, I have chosen the tribe of Levi. So in dealing with the bloodline of the Levites, it is broken down into 3, really 4 or 5, depending upon the way you want to look at it, families. But what I have are the 3 families that were instituted by God to do the service of the tabernacle. And I'm not dealing with Aaron's family or Moses' bloodline or what have you, but the Levites in general, the other 3 families. Those that somewhat would be considered behind the scenes. You have Gershon's family, which is mentioned in verse number 25, and you have the Kohaths, and you have Merari, which is really has a role on it, but it's Merari, the house of Merari. And so notice what the charge was given to each family, so we can see how it was organized, how God set it up in such a perfect way. But it says in verse number 25 in the block down below, in the green block under Gershon's family, it says, and the charge of the sons of Gershon in the tabernacle of the congregation shall be the tabernacle and the tent, the covering thereof, and the hanging for the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the hangings of the court, and the curtains for the door of the court, which is by the tabernacle, and by the altar round about, and the cords of it for all the service of the Lord. So the Gershons were given to this. This is where their sole responsibility, when the Israelites stopped, when God stopped, they stopped. When it set up, this was their responsibility. If it broke, they had to fix it. Hey, this is the only thing that they were concerned of. Now for the Kohaths, the other portion of Levites, it says the families of the son of Kohath shall pitch one side of the tabernacle southward, and the chief of the house of the father of the families of the Kohathites shall be Elzaphan, the son of Uzziel, and the charge shall be the ark, and the table, and the candlestick, and the altars, and the vessels of the sanctuary wherewith they minister, and the hanging, and all the service thereof. So they was in charge of those items. And Merari's family was in charge of the following. According to verse 36, it says, and under the custody of, and the charge, custody and charge of the sons of Merari shall be the boards of the tabernacle, and the bars thereof, and the pillars thereof, and the sockets thereof, and all the vessels thereof, and all that serve it thereto, and the pillars of the court round about, and their sockets, and their pins, and their cords. So all the Levites were gainfully employed. Gainfully employed. And so we see in Numbers 1 that, and we have read this Numbers 3 and 5 and 12 already in the previous slide, but in Numbers 1 it practically says the same thing. Like it says in verse 50, but you shall appoint the Levites over the tabernacle of the testimony, and over all the vessels thereof, and over all the things that belong to it. They shall bear the tabernacle and all the vessels thereof, and they shall minister unto it, and shall encamp round about the tabernacle. In other words, they were to live, this family, when it related to Aaron and the priestly line, Gershon's, Kohath's, and Merari's family, the whole group of Levites were they camped round about this tabernacle. And they were to have the charge. And this is how it was set up. So to take a moment to view the tabernacle, we have this picture here to represent how big it was, to give you an example of how big this item that the Levites set up. Not even an item, forgive me, Lord, for saying such. The coverings and the institutions of God, this how big it was. But it shows you, if you look at the top right hand corner where it says the American football field, you can see that it was almost 50 yards long, and not that wide, but almost 50 yards long. I would say about 35 yards to 40 yards long, just from looking at the picture. But it was a work to be done. And they set this up and tore it down every time the cloud stopped or the fire stopped, and the cloud moved and the fire moved by night. They had a work to do for the people. Likewise, as we too have a work to do by following the fire in our heart and the cloud in our heart today for the Lord by God's Spirit. Okay, so now when touching on the priest, we have the Levite, which really all of them are Levite, all three of them. So don't get confused when I say that. The Levite, but within the Levite, meaning under Levi, you had, it was broken up into the high priest, which was Aaron, and then you had the priest, which was Aaron's son, and then you just had the Levite, which was the families that we mentioned, the Kohaths, Gershons, and Merari. And so this is how it was broken down. So when you hear the name Levi or the Levites mentioned, just know that there were three families, really four. And then when dealing with Aaron, there came the priesthood. Aaron, one was designated as the priest, and the sons of the high priest and the sons of Aaron were the priests underneath Aaron. So, and then everyone else, which is considered Levites, but all received the tithe. But how it was instituted, we're about to get into right now. So, we see here that upon this setup, this was the government of God. I'm sure we can all agree that this is God's government being or was established once God set this all in order. And this is the making of God's government, to where God was setting up a rule that he may lead them in perfect peace and guide them. And he gave them everything that was needed to serve, to worship, to live, to survive, to receive mercy from his merciful hand. So God's government was established, or in the making. All right. So, the first question that we can ask, when did the children of Israel start giving the tithe? When did the children of Israel start giving the tithe? And you'll find that the children of Israel didn't start giving the tithe until they entered into the land of promise. Until they received what God said was their inheritance. And if you think about that, really, and we're about to go through that, when they wandered the 40 years throughout the desert, they didn't give a tithe. They didn't. Why? Because no provision was made. But when they got into the land that was promised, flowing of milk and honey, and they, remember, they bear the fruit on their shoulders, to bear witness of, hey, look what this land beholds. When God had this land set up, provided for them, once they conquered and dwelt in the land, this provision and God's government, this is where they were going to dwell and have an exciting, fruitful life once they ran all the other nations out. But we know in the process of time that they didn't. Alright, so, but they didn't give the tithe until they entered into the land of promise, until they received the inheritance. And you can see the tribes and what they received through Joshua 12 to chapter number 22. But in Numbers 18, and when we're reading on throughout these other verses dealing with when did they give the tithe, notice how God always mentioned that when you enter into the land. So, in fact, the Jews looked at any other land once they entered into the land because of the promise of God that it was unclean, it was filthy, it would pollute the land. It was not even worthy of mixing with the land that God had promised. This is why when Jesus told them in the New Testament, when he sent them the 70 out by twos and they went to the house, and he said, if they receive you, well, but if not, he said, shake the dust off. In other words, that shaking of dust, the Jews knew what he was talking about. It was as pretty much what he was saying was, look at that house as if they were an infidel. If they were a Gentile, a non-believer. Don't even allow the dust of that land, the dust of that house, to exit out into the land of Israel. And that's what the Jews do, and that's what the Jews do today. Don't even want the dust. Many of them who adhere to the law don't want the dust of any other soil to enter into or to mix with the dust, and so they would literally shake it off. All right. So, but in Numbers 18, and this is the land versus the Levites, the other tribes versus the Levites, to where the tribes, they inherited the land, and the Levites, their inheritance was God, and they received portion of the land. So it's the land versus it's what the two inherited. Being chosen of God, the Levites had an inheritance, and the other tribes, not being chosen, somewhat meaning to do a service, received the land that Joshua gave them. And so, but Numbers 18 will begin to explain. It says this in verse number 20, and the Lord spake unto Aaron, you shall have no inheritance in their land, neither shall you have any part among them. I am thy part, and I am thine inheritance among the children of Israel. And behold, I have given the children of Levi all the tenth in Israel for an inheritance, for their service which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Neither must the children of Israel henceforth come nigh the tabernacle of the congregation, lest they bear sin and die. But the Levites shall do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they shall bear their iniquity, and it shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that among the children of Israel they have no inheritance. Verse 24, but the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as an heave offering unto the Lord, I have given to the Levites to inherit. Therefore I have said unto them, among the children of Israel, they shall have no inheritance. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, thus speak unto the Levites, and say unto them, when ye take of the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance, then shall you offer up an heave offering of it for the Lord, even a tenth part of the tithe. So we see here that God specifically tells them that due to you have no reward or no portion when it relates to this fruitful land that they're going in. God's setting up his government. So to take care of the Levites and to give them something, their portion, he said, I am your portion and I am your reward. When we read on through other scriptures, he says the tithe of the land is all theirs. In other words, the only labor that you should do was for God. And the children of Israel labor, a tenth of that will be given unto you. But notice what he says in verse 24. He says, but the tithes of the children of Israel, which they shall offer as a heave offering unto the Lord, I have given to the Levites to inherit. Therefore I have said unto them, among the children of Israel, they shall have no inheritance. So we see from verse 24 that the Levites received a tenth from all the tribe of Israel. I know that's common sense and practical knowledge, but not to insult no one's intelligence, but to go through this journey and to make sure that we're clear. I'm sure we will all say, amen. Surely that is so, according to verse 24. Now, verse 26, let's read verse 25. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, in verse 26, thus speak unto the Levites, and say unto them, meaning the Levites, the Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, the family of the Levites. When you take of the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance, then you shall offer up that group, that family, the Levites. So 24, we see the children of Israel. Down 26, we see the Levites offering up a heave offering of it for the Lord, even a tenth part of the tenth. And this tenth part of the tenth was given, according to verse 27, let's read on. It says, and this your heave offering shall be reckoned unto you as though it were the corner of the threshing floor, and as the fullness of the winepress. Thus you also shall offer a heave offering unto the Lord of all your tithes, which ye receive of the children of Israel, and ye shall give thereof the Lord's heave offering to Aaron the priest. So we gather from 26 that the most important ministers, the priest, received 1/10 of the tithe. Let me say that again. The children of Israel gave 1/10 of everything they had to the Levites, meaning Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. They gave the Levite, which all of them were Levites, but remember, Aaron was the high priest, and his sons were priests under his stead, under his hand. They gave 1/10 of everything that the children of Israel gave them. 1/10 of that went to Aaron and his sons, the priest. So the most important ministers, the priests, the high priest, received 1/10 of the tithe. And then it goes on to say, after verse 28, out of all your gifts you shall offer every heave offering of the Lord of all the best thereof, even the hollow part thereof. Therefore you shall say unto them, when you have heaved the best thereof. Notice how God required that the Levites heave the best. Now this is going to be important when we get further on down, especially closer to the book of Malachi. And we're going to comprehend this whole subject of tithing in the name of Jesus. Just stick with me. I know it's a lot of reading, but it's necessary. He says that they heave the best thereof, even the hollow part thereof, out of it. Therefore you shall say unto them, when you heave the best thereof from it, that it shall be counted unto the Levites as the increase of the threshing floor, and as the increase of the winepress, and ye shall eat it in every place, ye and your households, for it is your reward for your service in the tabernacle of the congregation. It was given for them to consume, to partake of. And ye shall bear no sin by reason of it, when you have heaved from it the best of it. So as long as they have given the best, they wouldn't bear no sin. Neither shall you pollute the holy things of the children of Israel, he says, even to the Levites, lest you die. So let's just do a small review. Verse 24 shows us that the Levites received the tenth from the children of Israel. Verse 26 allows us to see that the most important ministers, the priests, received 1/10 of the tithe, all right, from their brethren. And when it relates to Aaron and the priests, they did not tithe. They did not give 1/10 of everything that they had. So it stopped at Aaron and the priests. They offered to God, but Aaron and the priests, they did not tithe as like the children of Israel and their brethren underneath them did when giving to them. It was for them to consume and to eat. And the offering, when it related to the tabernacle, we could get into, but just talking about the big picture of tithe. All right? And we see all this in 24 and 26. Still dealing with the institution of the tithe. The question must be asked, if you consider it, how many tithes were there? Or was there only one tithe? And some people don't think about this. And if not, how many tithes did the Lord command? And you'll find is that in the scripture, he commanded 3. There were 3 tithes that the Lord commanded. Number one was the annual tithe, which was received by the Levite. You could call it the annual tithe or the Levite tithe. And let's keep track of this. So number one was the annual tithe. What would be considered the second tithe was the Jerusalem feast tithe. All right? And this tithe was given in the first, the second, and fourth and fifth year. So just dealing with these two. The children of Israel technically gave two tithes a year. Why? Because every year they gave the annual tithe, which we could call the Levite tithe. All right? But also the Jerusalem feast tithe, and we're going to go through all these verses and it's going to be clear, was given on the first year, which would include that Levite tithe. So the Levite tithe was given every year, all the way up throughout the 7-year cycle. The Levite tithe was given every year throughout the 7-year cycle, which is just called the Shemitah. The Jerusalem feast tithe was given on the first year, the second year, the fourth year. Now we're dealing with a 7-year cycle. So throughout the 7-year cycle, it was given every year except the 6th year and the 3rd year. Why? Because those years, every 3rd and 6th year, you gave the welfare tithe. So some people would argue and say, hey, it was only 2 because they gave 2 tithes every year. That's why they didn't give the Jerusalem feast tithe on the 3rd and the 6th year, because the welfare tithe was due on the 3rd and the 6th year out of the 7-year cycle called the Shemitah. All right. So now if you compare that to our day, if you technically, because we're making a comparison and we're studying the topic of tithe and how it is taught and presented to the people of God today.